The textile industry holistically is really, really big. It's actually bigger than the 1 trillion that you see here if you're accounting for footwear and other types of fashion and apparel components. It's over $1 trillion worldwide, and it's reflective in growth very similarly to the way our population is growing. However, through the years, we've seen that textile also is known for being one of the more polluting and resource-consuming industries in the world also. And all of these combined base understanding of the industries are at the main trends that's driving the growth of what we see in digital today. Many countries in the world, a lot of people are consuming goods that are related to the textile industry. We can see here that about $782 per capita in the European Union is used on clothing and apparel and textiles and things of that nature, which means we're spending a lot of money in this space. A lot of people are very much aware of that, and we believe that that is one of the key drivers that helping digital printing to grow. One of the themes or one of the items that we see that's influencing many industries in the world is this movement from mass production to mass customization. And digital printing is one of the elements that helps within the textile industry to help change things with the speed of design, with the speed of art, where designers that have 4 seasons that might want to go to more changes throughout the year can do it today with digital printing. There is a way to mass customize products. You know, designers that beforehand had no brand appeal or no brand name because they couldn't come in and have a lot of products coming into the market very quickly, now can do that. So there is democratization of design, democratization of business. And of course, this continued thrust towards mass customization enable us now with digital printing to do the same for textile fabrics, whether they're in apparel or decor, to achieve the same way, the same types of things. And as you go around the show in the next few days, you'll see a lot of technologies that are enabling just that. And of course, all of those things are not going to happen if there is no benefit for the producers. Whether it's operational efficiency, less make-ready, less cylinders, less energy consumption, reduction of inventories, and of course, one of the most important elements when we come specifically to discussions around textile is sustainability, or supporting green innovation and things of that nature. All of these, from where we stand, bode very well with the transition from traditional manufacturing to digital manufacturing. And through the presentation today, we'll look a little bit about how those things reflect through the industry when we talk to end users themselves. So FESPA and InfoTrends since about 2007 has been doing market research with end users around the world. The last FESPA census, we've looked at what are the trends that are driving adoption of digital printing by print providers. And what we see commonly, not only for textile printing, but also in other areas of the marketplace, there is continued demand for short turnaround, just-in-time requirement, shorter print runs. Continuously, we hear in many segments of the print industry, textile included, this growing demand for short-run printing, and of course, versioning and other types of production that are common to textile as well as packaging, wide format printing, sign and display, and other areas. And that was resonating with us as we've done this research. Also, one of the top growing applications that end users that we research, and those came from as far as Brazil, Mexico, China, Western Europe, and other areas of the world, are telling us that probably the top 4 applications, I think this display chunked up some of the titles, but the top 4 components are textile for garment, textile for the core applications, and applications of that nature. So even in a population that is mostly sign and display, textile is taking one of the top roles in growth applications, which means end users are telling us that this is where they expect to make money in the future. Again, one of the next element, and once again, this kind of chunked out some of the titles. The second line here is what print providers told us their future investment in equipment is going to be, and that is textile printers. Now, textile printers come in many shapes, forms, sizes, and speeds, but when this population of over 1,200 people answered, what is the next piece of equipment you're going to buy, they told us they're going to invest in textile printers, which is really, really encouraging when we talk about the market for garments, decor, and industrial that we track very, very quickly. In the industry, there is, as I said, those different strands of places where textile printing is being used. Garment is typically one of the biggest ones that's moving to digital printing, given the fact that the speed of fashion is fairly, great. The changeovers from season to season, from country to country, the sensibilities of people that buy fashion, that causes the industry to change very, very quickly. Decor changes as well, not as fast as fashion. And in decor, we see things like bed linens, curtains, upholstery, and things of that nature. And the industrial side, as we've seen coming back from ITMA last year, a lot of companies are dealing with printing on carpets, tarpaulins, military applications, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all driving this industry and driving growth in the adoption of digital printing, given all of the benefits we've talked about. So at InfoTrends, when we look at the industry, we try to make sure that the trends that we cite to you are anchored in the reality of what's really happening in the field, and we do it in two ways. One way is to research with end users, and the other way is to research with vendors that are selling equipment into the industry. And we publish a forecast once a year to see where the trends in the marketplace and what the industry is doing. As you can see here, there was about 3,000 to 5,000 units went into the market in 2014 and 2015. Majority of them are sublimation machines of the smaller kind. There is also a range of machines that print other types of inks with reactive, acid, direct disperse. But majority of units came in from the sublimation area where transfer or direct sublimation happens. Some of them are below 10 meters per hour, some of them a little faster, but that's the bulk of the units that go into the marketplace. However, when we look at this market from other perspectives, one of them is what is the value of the printed matter that is being sold from the fabric manufacturer to the next producer in line for cutting, sewing, or the brand owner. And we can see that garment are reigning supreme. The digital transformation is happening predominantly with garment printing, and we believe that in 2015 we're looking at about $11 billion worth of fabrics that were printed and sold in the supply chain, and they represent about 66% of the total. And we believe this is going to keep on going into the next 4 or 5 years as the need in the garment industry to change very quickly continues to grow. The core area is growing as well, but not as fast because the need to change within the decor area is not as critical as it is with the garment area. And this one is a bit of a compounded slide that kind of shows inside the market for production printing, we look at two categories of products, those that produce below 80 square meters an hour and those that produce above 80 square meters an hour. And you'll see as you go around the show, you'll see a lot of these presented. When we juxtapose the print value, which is in the bars, you can see that the group that is above 80 square meters an hour, the group up there in the maroon color, is contributing to the most of the retail or the value of print that's been generated in the industry. However, when we look at the shaded area below, you can see that the installed base of machines, the number of machines that are generating that volume is relatively smaller compared to the smaller machines. So a lot of the machines that are in the smaller category even though there is many more of those machines, they're producing relatively lower volume compared with the high-end machines from companies like Konica Minolta, MS, EFI Reggiani, and others. So there is a dynamic in the market where big fabric manufacturers are adopting a certain type of technology that will allow them to actually shift their business. And when we look at this around the world, in Western Europe, we've seen companies moving from traditional technology into digital technology, where digital is displacing some of the analog. However, when we look at some of this in China, the pie is growing. So digital is not taking away necessarily analog, it's actually growing the pie further onward with digital technology. So analog is not declining, but the whole pie is growing a little bit further. Now, of course, this is going to be tapered as we go in time, but it's important to note that there is a universe of equipment and a universe of producers that can provide solutions across many, many areas of the industry, and there is some differences between them with regards to who is actually driving the industry. Last look we're going to take here is the actual print volume that's being generated in the industry. As I said before, garment is still reigning supreme in the transition to digital printing, and we can see that by the volume. We're looking at about 1 billion square meters in 2015, growing at about 37%, which is very, very rapid growth into the out years, with about 3.2 billion square meters produced, most of which in garment application, and following just below that decor. And the industrial market is still trying to figure out if digital technology is the right type of ways for them to go into the marketplace with. So we see that there is a very big market. There's about $1 trillion worth of textiles or textile product being sold in the world. We see that digital technology is definitely something that everyone needs to look at as they're planning their future. It needs to be part of the equation. It's not necessarily analog or digital. It's always a symbiotic relationship between the two. And the technology that many of the vendors that you'll see behind us at the show here today is what enabling that transition on a regular basis. And one of the first things that everyone that's involved in the textile and fabric industry is looking at is this doing any improvement to the environment? This is a critical component. We've seen this industry is like one of the biggest polluters in the world, and we have to realize that this pollution is not necessarily just part of printing. If you're looking at the complete life cycle of the garments that we wear, whether they're man-made or natural fibers, there are a lot of issues surrounding them, and those issues are being addressed around the world in different areas. So, for example, brand owners and designers are looking for improvements in greener fabrics or greener garments. We've seen the Better Cotton initiative worldwide, encouraging farmers to optimize production of cotton. Remember, cotton, when it gets to printing, it's already been sown, grown, there was water used to grow it, there was a lot of processes that happened before we even got to fabric that could be printed, and those are being optimized. So the Better Cotton initiative is helping farmers around the world to make sure that their cotton is green and maintained in sustainable standards. On the flip side of that, there is man-made material like polyester that we will see a lot of at the show. One of the biggest benefits of polyester, it's recyclable. I've been to packaging shows where they have shown dry fit, Nike types products made out of recycled bottles, right? PET can be converted into polyester fabric and then later on be printed on. Those needs to be recycled. As I mentioned ITMA before, we've been to ITMA, we saw several vendors promoting initiatives around the use of water and how much digital printing is helping conserve water. One of those is an example by MS that it's owned by Dover, their Textile 3.0 initiative. Think about it. 100 liters of water are used in production of 1 kilo of printed fabric. And digital printing can reduce that water consumption by 90%. So if All of the big vendors that are having machines going out into the marketplace, we've seen a range of single-pass machines from SPG Prints, Konica Minolta, MS, of course, that started this trend, and a few other vendors. MS calculated that if there's 300 of those products in the world printing textiles, that'll free up 10 liters of water for every person in the world. Now think about it. Some countries, they don't suffer too much from water shortage. But if you go in the Middle East, if you go in China, if you go in India, clean water is a precious commodity. Actually, without clean water, there is no life. So anything we can do in our industry to promote sustainability is going to help the industry grow, and this is one of those items that we see. We also saw EFI Reggiani promoting green factories, indicating that it's not enough only to look at what's happening in print. It has to be the whole process of creating fabrics ready to print and after the print itself. So one set of innovation is going to drive sustainability. However, digital printing on itself requires a lot of innovations in order to make sure that the production of digital fabrics is actually high quality and it meets all of the standards for rub resisting and washing and things of that nature. And there is a few key drivers. We moved from one computer to the other, and I think the resolutions are a little different on them. What we've seen in the inkjet industry is a range of innovations that are driving quality and consistency and reliability further. We've seen manufacturing of printheads using MEMS fabrication, which is micromechanical electronics that makes better printheads, more reliable, more accurate, and they can run for many more hours. We've seen a range of products that are driving those. You know, there were some single-pass devices, as we mentioned, from Konica Minolta, or the picture that you see here above us. Those are the printheads inside the Pike product from SPG Prints. A lot of very involved electronics that allow us to now print with single-pass devices. And a lot of those devices, as you can see from the sample here on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see how a Konica Minolta device is setting up all of its print heads. With automatic calibration, they go from individual heads into one solid, contiguous, uniform print, which is very, very important. When your machine is 1.8 meters wide or 3.2 meters wide, you need to make sure that the print on the left side of the machine is not going to be any different from the right side of the machine. And the technology that we're looking at, from production workflow to automatic alignment and calibration with color calibrations, are the drivers that allow us to move from samples into full production in high volume on a regular basis. And those are critical for the operations. You cannot calibrate those machines by tweaking them and moving the ink channels manually as you prepare for production. It has to be automated. And the innovation we saw coming out of ITMA are indicating that the industry is moving in that direction. Also, when we're talking about innovations in textile printing, we have to look at inks. Inks for fabrics vary from the different types of fabrics that are around. If we're using cottons, we use reactive inks. And reactive inks are the ones that would stay on the fabric, they'll be permanent, and they will permeate all the fibers as we print them. So we've seen innovation in reactive ink. We've seen innovation around disperse ink, where inks that have some splatter and it causes all sorts of artifacts in print are being modernized in order to meet the needs of inkjet printing, so they can be reliably jetted without clogging the print heads or stopping the machines in mid-production to clean it up or to make it ready for the next run. We've seen pigments moving from about 2-3 years ago to inks that were not really usable for digital printing because the color gamut wasn't there or the permanency wasn't there. Coming back from Haim Textile early this year and from ITMA last year, we've seen pigment inks growing in their capabilities, but now the market for the core has different dynamics, so the implementation of pigment inks and the benefits from pigment inks are going to take a little longer to come into market. And simply what pigment inks bring to many fabric producers is there is no need to do steam fixation or to do washing afterwards. You can print on the fabric, and when it comes out of the machine and is dried out, it's ready to use. Now that's suitable predominantly for the core applications and some fashion application, but not for all applications. And of course, sublimation is one of the biggest areas that's growing. Sublimation printing has been part of the FESPA community for many, many years. It's been used for flags, signs, and banners, and many other applications. And now, think about it. Anyone that has a transfer-based sublimation equipment can make sports apparel, can make many other applications in addition to the traditional graphic arts application we've been doing. So now new opportunities open up by using sublimation ink. So the ink market is also very, very important because the dynamics of ink are influencing how we're going to implement our digital printing strategy. And it's important to note that it's not one ink to rule them all. It's going to be several inks for several applications. And as print providers, you need to know that that's something that's very, very important to understand. There was one last ink that was introduced last year at ITMA as well, which is a VAT dye. That's a very high permanency ink. In the analog market, it's a very cheap ink that's used to do applications such as military fatigues or uniform for police or healthcare and things of that nature, because it's very, very high permanency. But those inks have been not available for digital until last year, and this ink will slowly make its way into the marketplace, and we'll have to track how well it's doing. But up till now, we've talked about, what's happening in the world, what's happening in technology. We're intuitively aware of the fact that digital printing is a reality. So now that we, so to speak, solve the issues around the technology, there are a few elements that are critical for the transition of digital printing. Digital printing does not happen in a vacuum. Digital printing, the benefits of it are having significant implication on supply chain. And remember at the beginning of the discussion, we talked about the move to mass customization. Okay? In order to move to mass customization, it's not enough to buy a digital printer. Okay? Buying a digital printer is only the beginning of the discussion. Right? Now we need to make sure that jobs can come in and jobs could get fulfilled on the other side. That means that the whole supply chain has to change according to this new reality. You can see here on the left-hand side is the business model from Zara. Zara was one of the first companies that went digital with vertically integrated manufacturing. Okay? They do their designs, they standardize on fabrics, they standardize on printing process in order to provide their users with a range of designs, with a range of possibilities to get delivery of product at the time that they want, at the point of need. Which means they've created a supply chain that can take advantage of their ability to drive product very quickly into the marketplace. And that is one of the key elements, because these are the guys, the Zaras of the world are going to be the people that will buy product produced in digital devices. And the producers need to be able to feed into that supply chain in an effective way. Otherwise, if digital printing in and of itself, from a cost perspective, is going to be similar to analog, there will be no impetus to move from analog to digital. There is not going to be any benefit. The supply chain changes of things like purchase activated manufacturing, where there is no inventory, there is no stock, but the product are ordered on demand, those are going to be the drivers that will meet the need of vendors to have a complete solutions. Many of the vendors, the big ones, such as the sports apparel companies, they're looking for complete control over their supply chain. They want to know at any given time what happens in their supply chain, where are materials coming from, where they're going to, and they want to be able to know that if they order 100,000 shirts from one vendor and 100,000 of the same shirts from another vendors, that they will all look the same when they come to the store. Okay? So those are the second level trends that we see that are now going to happen that will help streamline the rest of the operation. So things such as web to print, the ability to go on a website and order something that goes right into production, the ability to have automated production and tracking and planning. So when data goes into an operation, anyone can open say a portal and take a look and see that machine number 1 is doing job for this company, and the job is going to be completed at a certain time and date, and you can see your whole operation and provide the brand owners the ability to see when their products are going to be ready. Quality assurance, defect detections. How many of you have been, for example, to a fabric manufacturing plant, in the last, several years? Raise of hand. One person, two, a few of you. If you've been to a fabric manufacturing plant, you'll see that after everything is printed and washed and cleaned, there is rolls of paper mounted into inspection systems. And there is a person standing there rolling the fabric in front of them to make sure there is no defects in the fabric. Now, we all know that with the right automation, some of those activities could be automated with machine vision, with machines that can find the defects on the machine before it even goes to inspection. All of these are essential in order to change the supply chain. And one last element, which is very, very important. How many of you are familiar with color management and the notion of consistency around color, typically called delta E? How many of you? Well, a bunch of you. So you know how hard it is to hold a 2 delta E on your output across all of your production. It is very difficult to make sure that a machine from day to day to day to day produces the same color. You got to calibrate it. If the weather changes, the machine changes. The humidity changes, the machine changes. All of these things are applicable in digital production. And the vendors that we've seen with the newer machines are starting to take note of these kind of things and embed them into their production tools. So to kind of cap it up very quickly, we see brand owners looking to move to digital print in a way that helps them create more design, have more freedom to do, but it presents also a new business paradigm shift that they need to be able to address effectively. And that's a tall order beyond just the element of print. We see most industrial manufacturers worldwide are adopting digital imaging technologies because of that ability to attend to the needs of their customers very, very quick. And also, if there's a significant improvement on environmental impact, that's a reason for them to move forward. And of course, the last but not least is continued innovation in inkjet printing technology that allows cost-effective solutions to become available in any levels of solution from high-end to low-end, and basically democratizing fabric printing not only to a select group of very high-end producers, but to all those who like to go into this market and utilize their graphics imaging capabilities to drive new business with adjacent applications. So this is basically an anchoring kind of presentation to help you kind of grasp what happens in a very, very large industry as it moves in through technology and the benefits that technology brings to the marketplace. And I think that's it for me. Roland, do you have any?
Yeah, thank you very much for this excellent presentation. Yep. I do have a question. Maybe people in the audience also have a question, but I wanted to ask you something because you were saying that there's a growth, obviously, and it is mostly technology investment. Is there a key motivator for the economics behind the machines? Because you were saying you have an aggregated amount of smaller machines, but they do not compare with the volume that is being produced with the amount of high volume machines. So is that mostly an economic thing?
Well, digital printing brings in a range of different changes. Typically, as we've seen with other areas, there is the immediate cost of digital printing itself, the total cost of ownership of digital printing. I've seen digital printing that in the right volume at the right level could compete on a cost basis with traditional technology. But typically that is not the case. Typically digital printing might be a little more expensive than analog printing on a cost basis. However, when we're looking at the complete cost of producing on the whole supply chain, including waste and returns and all of those components, digital printing becomes a completely different story, because with digital print, you can print only what you need for the production run. So for example, if you're an emerging designer and you're not really sure that this particular pattern or design or clothing that you're making is going to sell, you can start on a much, much lower scale with mitigating the risk of big production and then move on to the final production later on as the business grows. And also, when we look at it both from the high volume producers to the low volume producers beforehand couldn't go into the market and offer solutions. So for example, if you look at companies like Spoon Flour, where individual can go in and order as a quantity that's as little as a quarter yard to make a pillow or a chair case. Beforehand, there were no ways to do that. So there's a whole section on the low end side of products that otherwise would not be available because you couldn't order a small enough run. So now there is opportunities, economic opportunities on the low volume side and on the high volume side. Each presents a different strategy to the users. But like with every other technology, this is not something that you buy in and tomorrow morning people flock into your operation and you can get stuff done. Having a device is part of a strategy that has to take into account who are your customers, what their needs are, and how do you address their needs in a timely fashion. If you have that plan in place, then digital technology could become the way to implement that strategy. Okay. But in and of itself, a digital product is not a strategy.
Right. So are there any questions from the audience for this presentation? Yes, of course. I'll come to you.
Yeah. Very nice presentation. Thanks, Ron. You mentioned Zara. And Zara had an excellent idea, integrating not just the printing, but also the whole supply chain. It's a very good idea, and that should be the future. So, but again, Zara is the big company, and who has maybe a strong leadership, who understand each process and integrate it. Maybe H&M similar, or that kind of a big company is similar. So, but Zara, H&M, they are not everything of the world. What do you think about a small company, small exist company to survive under this trend?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Zara and H&M, there are big ones that have been published that we all know about. However, I've met a few companies that are really, really small at TextWorld USA, small mom and pop operation that are moving into vertically integrated manufacturing. So companies that in the past we used to source fabric from one place, printed fabric from another place, and they would provide some secondary offerings. We see some of these moving into completely integrated manufacturing. So now they do their fabric, they bought a few digital machines, very mid-sized ones, and they're offering also integrated manufacturing. So what you buy from them is a finished garment, not fabric. But there's always going to be in between all of these. Everyone is not moving to fully integrated manufacturing. But the smaller ones that we've talked to are citing the need to move fabric from different places in the world and improving their supply chain. They're using that as a justification to invest in digital printing that helps them to do things locally. And I've seen about 4 or 5 of these at TextWorld USA that bought into digital printing for exactly those reasons, because they did not control their printing beforehand. They had to buy it from someone else, and now they've bought digital printing to bring it in-house in order to manage production. And those are companies that are below, anywhere between $10 million of turnover down to about $2 million in turnover. So it happens in different areas. Some of them we rarely hear about because they're so small. And you only hear about it when you go to those types of trade shows, and you can see that the big brands are doing this, but there is also availability lower down in the chain to move in this direction. We visited a few companies in Italy that are doing, high-end silk printing. They're the same way. When we sat with them, they basically indicated that by 2018 they will be 100% digital, just because it simplifies their supply chain, even though they don't do the complete integration end-to-end, but digital helped them move in that direction. So there's probably, success stories in every level, not just the big available ones that we can get business cases that are moving in that direction as well.
So I saw that there were a couple of more questions. I'll take one more, and then all the other questions can come in a little later.
Thank you. So you have digital printing, but in most cases, after digital printing, you have to finish the articles again. So for a small, let's say, printer, he has to go to a commission finisher to do the finishing. So all the flexibility in printing, you lose some flexibility in printing because you have to go to a commission finisher. So the answer, of course, is that for me, colorants are chemicals. So of course, why not digital finishing on the same machine? And I have a small company, and we're developing these functional inks at this moment, like anti-static inks and hydrophobic and super hydrophobic inks, which you can use on the same machine as a printer. So in this way, you can, let's say, eliminate that you have to go after printing also to commission finisher. And in this way, you have more flexibility, of course.
Yeah. If I look at what has happened in the world of printing, I've been covering digital printing in several industries: packaging, decorative, textiles. And if you look at what happens in those areas, you can see that pre-treatment and post-treatment could ultimately be in line with the printing device. You can always add more components at the end of the machine to add fire retardancy or antibacterial or things of that nature. Sometimes you can put it right into the ink. So those are fairly straightforward to ultimately put in line depending on the cost. If I'm looking at what I've seen at ITMA last year, we've seen complete lines for digital printing, including steaming and washing and complete finishing of fabric within one small system with a small footprint, as opposed to the big investment you've seen up till now with big fabric manufacturers, are now available for digital printers as well. So it's up to, the industry will force those items because ultimately you need them onto the fabric, and the solutions will make themselves available, as we've seen with the emergence of pigments and others. Those things become available in varying levels of scale for both high volume environments and smaller environments. And the next level from finishing that is chemical based is also cutting and sewing that needs to happen as well. We've even seen the printing getting involved with that, where specific cut markings are now being added into the fabric design. So the fabric is printed already into the pattern. And then that goes into a cutting table, and then that can go into an automatic sewing machine. We've seen it go all the way through that level of production in areas where we assign to what's called purchase-activated manufacturing. So you're not really printing a broad fabric with a pattern, you're actually printing the pattern on the fabric.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That will be the end of this presentation. Thank you very much for your excellent